Many of you are probably not aware of a practice that Father Thompson did at a previous parish. That is, on the Feast of the Holy Family, he would make it a point to go out and visit one of his families because he thought this was very appropriate. And so one day after Mass, he went to this family, the Smiths, with their 4 young children to spend some time just visiting and getting to know them. Well, the children were very well behaved for about the first 15 or 20 minutes. But being young children, they did what they normally do. They started running around and fighting over this toy and screaming and fighting, yada, yada, yada. But, you know, Father Phil doesn't have a lot of tolerance for that kind of stuff. And so finally he reached his point and he said, "Mrs. Smith, is this how the Holy Family would behave?" And she looked at him and said, "Yeah, and they only had one." The moral is, after this Mass, if the phone rings and your caller ID says St. Pius, it may be Father Phil. And you judge whether or not you want to answer the phone, okay? A favorite cartoon strip of many, for many, many years, is Peanuts. And there's a story about Lucy. You know, Lucy is the one I promised to let you kick the football this year, Charlie Brown, you know. And her younger brother, Linus, the resident theologian, the resident philosopher. And they found themselves with the chicken wishbone. And so as they were looking at it, Lucy explained to Linus that if they pulled it apart, whoever got the bigger part of it, that person's wish would come true. And so Linus says, "But do I have to tell you what my wish is? Do I have to say it out loud?" And Lucy said, "Of course. If you don't, your wish will never come true." But Lucy says, "I'll go first." She said, "I wish for a new sweater, a new bike, a new dress, and $100. Linus said, "I wish for a long life for all of my friends, world peace, advancements in medical research." And after that, Lucy reached over and grabbed the wishbone and threw it away and said, "Linus, that's the trouble with you. You're always spoiling everything." I'm suggesting that perhaps Lucy would say something similar about today's gospel. It's Christmas, after all, and our thoughts and our prayers and everything have all been about peace and love and joy, as well as giving and receiving gifts. Fleeing to Egypt to escape Herod is not a part of our Christmas. You know, I also have to make a comment about those of you who are preparing for your own fleeing. You know, you think you wish to flee from Old Man Winter of Iowa and go south, somewhere where there's more brown and less white, I guess. The point is, it ain't the same as what our gospel is talking about. But when we think about our gospel, it isn't just about being a spoiler. It isn't just about being negative. Today's gospel challenges us to see Christmas in a fuller light, something beyond the rose-colored glasses and tinsel. You know, we are like the little boy who is standing in front of the window of a pet shop, and he's there to select a puppy for his birthday present. So his father let him there by the window, and he came back and he said, "Son, have you picked one out yet?" And the son said, "Yes, Daddy." And he pointed at the puppy that was right up next to the window, and it was wagging its tail furiously. And the little boy says, "I want the one with the happy ending." Don't we all? Isn't that a part of our makeup? We all wish for nice, happy endings. We would like the world to be and to remain a silent night, a holy night. But the world isn't that way. Babies change, and they grow up, and they even become teenagers. In spite of our wishes, bad things happen to good people. You know, we don't like it when our television sets invade our world of affluence with pictures of families who are fleeing for their lives in Syria or the Sudan or in parts of our own Western Hemisphere. It's not a pretty picture. We call them refugees. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph were refugees. You know, it's easy to see refugees as them or others. It's easy to say how we have nothing in common. And it's just as easy to say, but they are a part of the family of God. The hard part is doing something about it. Refugees, not only in the Scripture, but in our regular everyday life, all share a sense of rejection, a sense of isolation, a sense of being abandoned, of being lost, of being worthless, of having no hope. And so, to this extent, those who are victims of tornadoes or earthquakes or floods, or who have lost a loved one because of gun violence, or those who have lost their jobs and can't find work, those whose parishes have been closed and have no place to go, those of us who have lost a spouse, we are all refugees. And if we aren't, we realize that we all could be. We all have the potential of being a holy family, because under such circumstances we stick together. We love and support each other regardless. And so when we see a picture of a child in such a camp, when we see a lineup of people waiting for water or a sack of flour, this child could be my child. It could be your child. This could be you. This could be Jesus. And that new family that we have in our neighborhood, it could be Jose, Marietta, and Jesus. We are called to have a full Christmas. And to have a full Christmas, I believe we have to keep the spirit of Christmas alive. St. Paul, our second reading, puts it this way: put on heartfelt compassion, put on kindness, put on humility, gentleness, forgive one another. But above all, put on love, the bond of perfection. You know, just recently we heard quite a bit about a war on Christmas. And many of us got upset. I want to suggest that much better than getting upset about a certain name, we need to get excited and upset about what each of us is doing or not doing in order to keep the spirit of Christmas alive throughout the whole year. You know, on television, and this is good, they get lots of publicity. Meals are prepared by various churches or organizations for the homeless during Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Easter. And this is good. But there's a question that remains. Where and what do these people eat during the rest of the year? As an individual, every time we bring in a sack of food, we are keeping the spirit of Christmas alive. As working through MCO, our contributions put something on the table. But there's only so much that as an individual we can do. It is a fair question to wonder if our society is doing what it could or what it should. You know, at the trip to Egypt, we can only imagine how difficult it must have been. And had it been us, what would our thoughts have been? You know, what were their thoughts? But this was God's child, after all. Why was he having to flee anything? They had been chosen to be special servants of God. Why would God put him through this? The angel said, "Do not be afraid." And yet when we don't know what's going to happen, we are afraid. The questions abound and remain to no matter what happens to us. It's why me? Why is this happening? Why was my son in that classroom at Newtown? Why did my wife have to die? You know, we can follow in God's ways. We can understand that God's ways are not man's ways, but it is difficult. And after my wife died, there were lots of times, lots of days when it was a let's feel sorry for Lanny day. And I got comfort from that. And they happened and they happened. Until I talked with a priest. And then a conference kind of looked at me and said, "Lanny, you are loved." But you know, Father Gary wasn't talking just to me. He was talking to Bill and Phil and Sally and Ann. You are loved. God's love is here. We celebrate the birth of God's love. We celebrate God's love and God's presence throughout the year and throughout our lives. And as a result, there were fewer, and there still are fewer. Let's be sorry for Lanny days. But there are good times and bad times. God so loved the world. Our challenge is to let the peace of Christ control our hearts. It's a story about a farmer who had a silo. And every Christmas on the top of the silo, he would put an illuminated star. And the entire county could see it. And that was Farmer Jones' tribute to Christmas. That's the Christmas star. And everybody took great pride. And it really made everybody feel good. And he'd always leave it up for a good month or so. But this year, or last year, he took it down right after Christmas. And that upset people. They said, "Well, why did you do that?" And instead of the star, he put up an illuminated cross. He says, "Why did you change the star to a cross?" And Farmer Jones looked at him and said, "The cross is there to remind us why we celebrate Christmas."